The NLADA's Beacon of Justice Awards honor members of the pro bono legal community who are tireless advocates for equal justice. The 2023 Beacon of Justice honorees have demonstrated a commitment to intentional inclusivity and intersectionality with their LGBTQ+ rights, gender equity, and racial equity work. Congratulations to all the winners of this year's Beacon of Justice Awards. They are Aiken Gump, Baker Hostetler, Baker McKenzie, Crowell and Mooring, Deckard, DLA Piper, Freed Frank, Hanson Bridget, King and Spalding, Kirkland and Ellis, Kramer Levin, Latham and Watkins, McCarter and English, Mintz, Nixon Peabody, Ropes and Gray, Scadden, Squire Patton Boggs, Steptoe, Wilmer Hale, and Wilson Sonsini. Keep an eye out for the Beacon of Justice book coming later this summer, outlining the 2023 Beacon of Justice winners and their commitment to pro bono work.
Kaden and DeAndre are two black males who were high school students. The school decided that they could no longer attend their school while wearing their dreadlocks in their natural formation.
When I was first approached with cutting my locks, it was because it was out of dress code or it wasn't deemed presentable in the Barbers Hill point of view.
Kaden and DeAndre were targeted and harassed by the school district, and the quote-unquote enforcement of the policy was against these two as opposed to broadly against the school.
Hair ties, different hairstyles. We basically tried everything that they told us that we could do, and it still wasn't good enough. I feel like they wanted me to stop almost being me.
Aiken took this case because we really believe in pro bono work, in fighting against racial injustice, and standing with our partners like the LDF.
When I first met Roxanne and the lawyers at Aiken, it was like a breath of fresh air. They really cared about me and how I was feeling and how I was processing this entire situation.
We filed a motion for a restraining order and injunction against the school district, and the court ultimately granted our injunction, and Kaden was able to matriculate into Barbers Hill High School and graduate while wearing his locks.
I was back in the same classrooms that they wanted to keep me out of. It felt really good.
At our firm, at Aiken, we value pro bono in the same way we value the rest of our work. At the end of the day, we're really happy to do all of our work for all of our clients, but there's a little something quite special about doing pro bono work.
Having Roxanne and the team here, it feels like we can conquer the world. It feels like it really feels like we have a fighting chance.
Thank you so much to the National Legal Aid and Defender Association for this recognition for our firm, Baker Hostetler. I'd also like to congratulate all of the other recipients of Beacon of Justice Awards. Here at the firm, we are proud that in 2022 alone, we billed over 20,000 hours to pro bono matters. Many of those were in the LGBTQ+ space, where we represented individuals and were fortunate to be able to have an incredible impact on their lived experiences in their lives. A couple of the matters that we handled included a nationwide injunction against the Trump administration for rescinding protections for trans individuals under the Affordable Care Act. What was interesting about that case is that the rule was promulgated shortly after Bostock v. Clayton County found that trans people were protected under Title VII. We also did a significant amount of work for Lawyers for Good Government, who assisted LGBTQ plus refugees at the Mexican border who were trapped in Mexico due to the administration's Title 42 and Remain in Mexico policies. The reason why a humanitarian parole is important for these individuals is that they face disproportionate amounts of discrimination in Mexico based on their LGBTQ and in many instances trans identities. So getting them across the border into the United States where their health and safety could be better protected was of paramount importance.
Working with our partners, Immigration Equality, we had the opportunity to work on a once-in-a-career case that really made a significant impact on our clients' lives. The story of Farhanda and Rabia is really an amazing love story that goes back decades. They fell in love in college, but had to hide their relationship because in Pakistan, you can't be gay. They hid for 30 years until the Taliban found out about them and they had to flee to the United States. But even in the United States, their family didn't accept them. They were falsely arrested and accused of a horrible crime. But Baker got involved and we fought to get those charges dismissed. We helped them win asylum. We helped them live the life that they truly tried to live for the last 30 years. We assisted them to become permanent residents of this country, and it was one of the most proud moments in my legal career when I stood there in Federal Plaza as they took the oath of allegiance to become citizens and Americans.
3. One of the areas we are particularly proud to work in is in the area of trans advocacy. Since 2015, Baker Hostetler has worked with the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund to effectuate dozens of legal name changes for adults and children. These name changes are crucial because it allows these individuals to be reflected in the world as who they see themselves, who they really are. And the response has been nothing short of incredible. Participate in that small part of these people's journey. But the work in the trans advocacy space has not ended there. We continue to work with TILDEF, including in the areas of impact litigation, where we worked alongside them and the New York Civil Liberties Union to effectuate the strongest prison and jail policies as it comes to the treatment and care of transgender inmates. Unfortunately, however, all of this work has essentially come to a head this year. 2023 has seen record number of transgender legislation passed by states with anti-trans sentiments when it comes to sports and medical care. In April of this year, Baker Hostetler teamed with the Women's Sports Foundation and Athlete Ally to file an amicus brief on behalf of them and 35 professional athletes concerning a transgender sports ban in the state of West Virginia. Standing in line with these organizations for these sports bans is crucial. Sports traditionally is one of the last vestiges of sex discrimination in this country, where women and men are not seen as equal and are consistently separated. Bringing in the transgender argument only furthers that separation when it comes to equality among the sexes. We are proud to continue to do this work with the understanding that it's not going to end today. And we stand with all of our fellow awardees in moving forward together to effectuate the good that these communities need to see from the legal community moving forward.
Sanctuary for Families is a pro bono legal services organization that gives services mostly to people involved in situations where there's domestic abuse or domestic violence. And they actually have a particular sub-program that focuses on incarcerated survivors of gender violence, people who've been convicted of crimes and circumstances that some identify as having elements of self-defense. The case was, in a lot of ways, straightforward. There was a dead man on the floor of an apartment with a single stab wound, and there was no question who had stabbed him, our client. And so I think for prosecutors, certainly for police, this is a case that's very simple. Someone's been killed and we know exactly who did it. Obviously, the case was a lot more complicated than that. It was not a usual circumstance for a homicide. A 50-year-old woman who was a professional and registered nurse at a hospital, at Cornell Hospital, estranged husband, her apartment, an ex-wife who'd taken out an order of protection against him, a restraining order against him. Anyone looking at the circumstances of this offense had to acknowledge this history of violence, this history of abuse, this history of alcoholism, and had to give some weight to the possibility that our client had acted in self-defense.
One of the arguments the prosecutor was making was that Tracy purposely did this because she was jealous that he was meddling with or having relationships with other females. I kind of took the reins and sorted through thousands of files, and through listening through the calls and going through the documents, I just knew that wasn't right. Going through the phone calls to kind of negate this from the prosecutor's side was my kind of charge. I went in full throttle, and of course we didn't find anything to prove that. I was listening to her emotionally, physically, and mentally just deteriorate, which was very heartbreaking and drove me to keep going and listen for anything that may help.
The case was dismissed, and so there was a lot to feel really great about.
I just had an immediate sigh of relief and joy. I just pictured Tracy and her family reunited, and it's just a great feeling to know that your work directly helped facilitate this decision.
I'm a criminal lawyer by training. I was a federal prosecutor for 9 years. I've never represented someone who I thought was factually innocent in the way that Tracy McCarter was and is. It's nice to have that feeling that you're pursuing truly just outcome, and it's going to make a tremendous difference for your client, her life, her family.
Major victory for us, our partners, sanctuary for families, and especially for survivors of domestic violence throughout the United States. And I think it's great that this will set precedent for similar future cases.
Recently, lawyers, including myself at King & Spalding, are very happy to reflect back and talk about two important victories that we've had in the LGBTQ racial and gender equity space. The first involved a class action victory on behalf of all transgender prisoners in the state of Illinois who had been for a long time receiving very subpar and ineffective healthcare and mental health care.
Our judge, who was the chief judge in Illinois, she issued preliminary injunctive relief imposing immediate and specific obligations by the part of the Illinois Department of Corrections. And then there were longer implications, like changing the policies of how medical and mental health treatment is provided. This was a really important case. It was the first class action of its kind, and it really had broad sweeping implications both in Illinois and nationwide.
The second case was in the state of Georgia, representing several individuals who sought and needed important and critical medical care that was covered by Medicaid. Georgia, in its interpretation, which was discriminatory, of the Medicaid Act, had prohibited these individuals from receiving this care.
The matter ended up settling. This settlement is going to have broad implications for, hundreds or thousands of transgender individuals who rely on Georgia Medicaid for their medical treatment. These people have not been able to access some of the care that they need and some of the care that they want because of the exclusion of Georgia Medicaid. And with this settlement, which resulted in the elimination of that exclusion, they will now finally be able to access that care.
We're awfully proud of our victories on these two matters and others that have occurred in recent years, but there is much work still to be done. We carry the torch ahead, we bring others to join our groups, and we try every day to think about ways to promote justice to help out individuals in need.
My client was an AUW student along with a group of AUW students that various teams at Kirkland represented. She was one of the students or alumni from AUW who left during the evacuation and kind of fall of Kabul back in 2021.
Since joining the firm, I've been involved in a number of Afghan pro bono cases, in particular asylum and refugee work. Some of the most, important or notable cases I've been involved in are representing Afghan families who evacuated Afghanistan in the wake of the Taliban regaining control of the country and are now here in Chicago, seeking asylum. I myself am an Afghan native. I moved to the United States when I was in high school, and I'm a beneficiary of the immigration process, so it's a cause that's just always been very near and dear to me. So I think having that language skill and then also having the legal background together has been incredibly helpful on our end as well as on our clients' end to be able to communicate with us openly, and then also for us to explain to them the legal side of things.
We had multiple teams at Kirkland working on these cases. I found it to be a great resource to be talking to other people or were actively working on similar cases. That was incredibly helpful. I think the resources at Kirkland are next level. There's tons of people here that have done lots of asylum work. So I think one big issue that we realized was so much of what our client's story were things that she just kind of viewed as ordinary course life for a woman in Afghanistan, and particularly a woman under sort of increasing Taliban rule in Afghanistan. She would tell us details that she was like, oh, that's just not a big deal. And it was actually like a really important piece of her story. And it was an important piece of her case. So I think just establishing a level of connection, getting comfortable with your client was kind of like the biggest overarching piece.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in an Uber on my way home from the office. The Uber driver asked if my full name was Layla Khan, and he had mentioned that my name had been floating around as somebody who was representing the Afghan community and speaking on their behalf, particularly here in Chicago. So it was nice to hear that our efforts are not going unnoticed.
The most rewarding was when she got her approval letter saying that her asylum was approved. But I think the most kind of personally rewarding was we went to Arizona and did the interview with her at the USCIS office. We got done with the interview and she turned to me after and was like, I think I did so good. And I was like, yes, I think you did too.
And our hope is, not only to give our clients a fresh new start, but also that our contributions and efforts will have a ripple effect on our clients' children and any future generations to come by giving them a chance to rewrite their futures.
As a person that was born in Jamaica, I saw how people were treated who were gay or perceived to be gay. They were verbally abused, they were beaten, they were stoned, and some people were actually killed. And then it really hits home because I have a cousin who's a transgendered male who can never return to Jamaica. And it's my hope that in helping others like him, that one day he can return to Jamaica and just be himself. Whether or not someone is able to live their true, authentic self should not depend on their ability to obtain legal counsel.
There is nothing like seeing your client return from the Gay Pride Parade in New York City, exclaiming that there is no way he could have ever gone to anything like that in his own home country.
When I first came out in the early 1990s, it was illegal in many places for me to be in a relationship with anyone other than a cis man. I had to be careful about what I put in housing applications, in job applications, lest someone turn me down, because it was totally okay to discriminate against me. I still had to worry about if I displayed affection to folks in public or if I was out with a girlfriend. There were a lot of stressors. And now you flash ahead, 2023, and I'm happily married with a young son to a wonderful woman, and work at a fantastic job with people I love where I get to be myself. But when I'm really honest with myself about why that is, what's made those changes that let me be here today, it has been the tireless work of the trans community, and particularly Black women and femmes. And yet oftentimes it is the the needs of the transgender community, and particularly those of Black women and femmes, that gets bumped to the bottom of the list. I work with a team of folks in a pro bono program at a firm that is committed to justice and equality, where what we knew we wanted to do was go into the community and listen and figure out what does leadership in the community need us to do to support them.
Carter English realizes that we are all so very lucky in so many aspects of our life, the most important of which is being true to who we are.
It's truly an honor to be one of those firms recognized by NLADA as Beacon of Justice Award winners this year. This award highlights the important and impactful work that firms like ours are undertaking in this space.
At Mintz, we are focused on being thoughtful, innovative, and intentional about our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at all levels. Our efforts are resulting in incremental and sustainable change across the board, both within our firm and also within the communities in which we live and work. Our focus on marginalized communities extends well beyond the walls of our offices, and we are particularly proud of the work of our colleagues on behalf of our most vulnerable clients.
Along with ACLU San Diego and Imperial Counties, Community Advocates for Just and Moral Governance, and Brody McBride Law, we filed a federal lawsuit against the San Diego Police Department, who seized the cell phone of a protester without a warrant during a peaceful demonstration against police brutality. A settlement was reached requiring San Diego Police Department to change its cell phone seizure and retention policy. This important victory protects the privacy and protectors' rights of all citizens.
Mintz is proud to support the National Center on Violence Against Women in the Black Community, also known as UJIMA. Mintz has and will continue to serve as outside counsel to UJIMA, specifically in corporate and employment matters, so that UJIMA can continue to devote its resources to education, training, research, and policy development.
I am incredibly proud of the training we have put together here at Mintz for healthcare providers who are receiving support through the Whitman Walker Institute. The past year or two, we've seen across our country multiple states pass or attempt to pass laws that would ban healthcare providers from treating trans youth. Our work currently at Mintz is helping to support those providers as we inform them about the laws being passed and also how those laws are going to impact their practice. These healthcare providers are really at the forefront of ensuring that trans youth are not just receiving medically necessary care, but life-saving care.
On behalf of the attorneys and staff of the firm, thank you so much for this recognition.
At Nixon Peabody, our program works to create a positive impact for people in need. We are working with a small but mighty nonprofit organization called Black Women's Blueprint that's working to construct a retreat center.
Black Women's Blueprint is a national organization empowering Black women to reach their full potential, organizing Black women to heal and to advocate for policies that will impact their lives.
Haven, New York is an extremely rural town, and it's quiet and rural, and it's a great place for the kind of retreat center that the Black Women's Blueprint plans to build there. I first learned about this project when I got a call from people in Ava asking me how to help oppose the project. But when I looked into it, I learned this was a great organization doing wonderful things, and that the opposition had nothing to do with land use.
The town was incredibly upset. The backlash was incredible. The racist vitriol was just shocking.
And I knew that our pro bono team at Nixon Peabody had both the resources and the desire to help them achieve this important goal of getting this retreat center built.
When I picked up the phone, I called Robert and he answered and he began to tell me how he felt, bearing witness to what had happened in the town. He offered us the spaciousness, the empathy that I think is the culture of Nixon and Peabody.
This kind of work embodies the mission of our pro bono program at Nixon Peabody. Is we're always striving to create and help create more inclusive and equitable communities, and to use our legal skills to empower those who have the deck stacked against them for all the wrong reasons.
Lowell's election system, in place for 64 years,
didn't just undercut minority candidates, it actively discouraged them from running for office. As a result, the City Council and School Committee have historically been exclusively white, even though Lowell's electorate is roughly 50% racially diverse. Now that's changed. Ropes and Gray partnered with Lawyers for Civil Rights to challenge Lowell's racially unfair election structure. Our team drove an instrumental settlement with the city that led to the signing of a consent decree. That led to an historic election outcome for the people of Lowell.
In 2015, in Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court ruled that the United States Constitution protects the right of two people of the same sex to marry.
Our love is equal.
I argued that case with the support of an incredible Ropes and Gray litigation team and the entire firm. However, more recent cases raised the question whether the Supreme Court will continue to protect the rights of LGBTQ+ individuals and couples. These decisions suggest that the constitutional rights may be limited to those who have historically enjoyed the law's protections. I am proud that Ropes and Gray continues to fight to protect the rights of LGBTQ+ individuals.
We are representing Pro Bono, a group of elderly, low-income immigrants whose homes are single-room occupancy units in San Francisco's Chinatown. They've been the victims of fraudulent lease terms, illegal fines and fees, racial discrimination, tenant harassment. This all happened when their buildings were taken over by a new property manager. I argued before the California Court of Appeal, seeking to affirm our team's victory on the core contract dispute in our case. We vindicated our clients' tenancy rights and obtained a court order that the landlord's lease was, in fact, unenforceable. In August, our team took the remaining statutory housing discrimination and tenant harassment claims to trial, giving our clients their day in court. The firm can and should be proud of this impactful case. It truly epitomizes the principle of pro bono publico, for the public good.
On behalf of the thousands of attorneys and professional staff at Skadden who have contributed to our firm's pro bono mission, we are honored and thrilled to be receiving the National Legal Aid and Defender Association's Beacon of Justice Award. My name is Peter Chun. I serve as Skadden's pro bono immigration attorney. In this role, I lead the Immigration Impact Project, or the IIP, a firm-wide initiative that seeks to help our volunteer attorneys deliver ever-improving pro bono immigration legal services by harnessing the efficiencies of a virtual practice group model. Before I had the privilege of being Skadden's pro bono immigration attorney, I was an associate in Skadden's litigation group, focused primarily on securities and antitrust litigation. But I was also an associate hungry to do pro bono immigration work. My first asylum case I took as an attorney was on behalf of a gay man from a nation in the Caribbean. As our Immigration Impact Project was taking shape, that first experience helped inform part of the structure of our IIP. Namely, the IIP includes advisory teams composed of volunteer attorneys who have worked on a particular type of immigration case and will help attorneys new to that type of immigration work. One of those advisory teams is dedicated to asylum work on behalf of LGBTQ individuals. Advisory teams like these have helped Skadden attorneys assist nearly 70 LGBTQ individuals with their asylum cases in 2022 alone. We are proud of our work that our attorneys have done on behalf of the LGBTQ community seeking refuge here in the United States.
Skadden is incredibly proud of the work that we've done on behalf of transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary clients to effectuate name changes and update their identification documents. For transgender and gender nonconforming individuals, often having an identity document that does not comport with your identity is traumatic and outs you at your place of business and in day-to-day life in ways that really can be disruptive and cause long-term harm. So we're incredibly proud of our support of the LGBTQAI community in updating these documents, in effectuating formal name changes, and in welcoming in clients who may have had their name change approved by the courts, but lacked the wherewithal to deal with the bureaucratic systems that involve updating your social security, your passport, your state identification, all of those type of documents that are needed for employment and generally just functioning in a day-to-day environment.
My name is Corrine Irish. I am a partner and director pro bono for Squire Patton Boggs, and we are honored to be a recipient of the Beacon of Justice Awards. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to talk about our work for LGBTQ+ rights and our work in the race and gender equity space.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Barrick, a partner in the corporate practice at Squire Patton Boggs. It has been our firm's privilege to partner with Equality Ohio, a bipartisan LGBTQ+ advocacy and legal services organization, to assist transgender individuals with legal name and gender marker changes across the state of Ohio. We are proud to support Equality Ohio in its work to promote equality and racial justice.
And I'm Natalie Vecchio, a Public and Infrastructure Finance Associate here at Squire, and I coordinate the Squire Equality Ohio project. It's a privilege to help our clients in the trans community navigate a maze of paperwork and unfamiliar and sometimes unfriendly legal system so that they can live their most authentic lives.
My name is Rafael Langer Osuna. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a litigation partner with Squire Patton Boggs and also presently a co-chair of the National Trans Bar Association and a co-chair of Bailiff, the nation's oldest LGBTQ bar association. In 2022, it was my pleasure to be part of Squire Patton Boggs' teams representing Amiki and Dobie Abbott, where we showed that gender-affirming care is not child abuse, and in the Seventh Circuit case where we showed that Illinois' gender name change laws were the most stringent in the country and unnecessarily so. It was also my pleasure as part of the National Trans Bar Association to help present the first group of trans lawyers for admission to the U.S. Supreme Court's bar, and I have been proud to work on behalf of 500 women scientists and various other organizations.
We always think about the initiatives that we do to celebrate the cultures, the history and heritage month types of events. The one thing that Squire Patton Boggs has done and is continuing to do is making sure that we're not only talking about who we are and what we do and celebrating those who are here with us in the workplace, but also how are we working and helping our clients to support and celebrate these types of celebrations, as well as those who are friends within the profession as well.
Steptoe is honored to be a 2023 NLADA Beacon of Justice Award recipient. We have a long-standing history of representing LGBTQ individuals throughout our pro bono program, stemming all the way back to our work against Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the United States military, to public accommodations cases against cake shop entrepreneurs, as well as fighting for the rights of same-sex foster parents in Philadelphia foster care system. More recently, we have brought two pieces of litigation that impact the daily lives of LGBTQ individuals throughout our country. First, in the healthcare space, under the previous administration, we brought a lawsuit in partnership with Lambda Legal, challenging HHS regulations through federally funded healthcare programs. We hope that we will be able to eradicate any religious exemptions against discrimination through Title IX, and so that patients, particularly transgender patients, can access healthcare that they need. Similarly, in the housing space, we partnered with the Human Rights Campaign to develop new strategies that we learned under the Bostock Supreme Court case from the employment sphere and apply them to federally funded housing programs so that transgender individuals in particular cannot be discriminated against from accessing the housing that they need and deserve. We look forward to working with both of these partners as well as many others, including individual representations of asylum seekers, transgender name changes, and many others in the fight for LGBT justice. Thank you.
Wilmer Hale is so honored to be recognized by the association this evening. We're also very proud of the work that we do to advance the cause of reproductive justice and LGBTQ+ rights. You're going to hear from two of our attorneys who've been doing remarkable work to protect the right to seek reproductive care, a right that was regrettably severely diminished by the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs to the harm of some of the country's most vulnerable people.
Wilmer Hale represents Ohio abortion clinics in their challenge to Senate Bill 23, a 6-week abortion ban.
On October 12, 2022, we won a major victory when Judge Christian Jenkins of the Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas held that the Ohio Constitution supports the right to abortion, enjoining the law's enforcement and allowing patients to receive abortions until 22 weeks after their last menstrual period. Our Hamilton County court complaint followed the Ohio Supreme Court's failure to act on our emergency relief request after the U.S. Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. On September 8th, the trial court entered a temporary restraining order and shortly thereafter ordered discovery and an evidentiary hearing. After the hearing, Judge Jenkins ruled from the bench that he would grant the preliminary injunction. In the written ruling that followed, the court adopted nearly all of our proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
In 2022, WilmerHale worked closely with Planned Parenthood and local counsel in Montana to prevent 3 state laws from going into effect that would have severely restricted abortion access in that state, rejecting the state's efforts to undermine long-standing state law precedent protecting abortion rights. A unanimous panel of the Montana Supreme Court sided with us on every issue and upheld a preliminary injunction blocking the 3 challenged laws. Having just briefed summary judgment, we're excited to continue our partnership with local counsel and with Planned Parenthood as we fight to ensure that all Montanans have access to abortions.
Hello, everyone. Hope all are doing well. Wilson Sonsini is honored to receive the Beacon of Justice Award for 2023, the 3rd year in a row, and to be recognized as a firm that is dedicated to intentional inclusivity and intersectionality with our pro bono and community service work, particularly as focused on LGBTQ+ rights and gender equity. Simply put, we represent the courageous. A few examples of our recent work include impact litigation defending the rights of transgender students, representing domestic violence survivors and obtaining restraining orders in child custody, representing a number of women who left Afghanistan to pursue their education and their dreams, and serving numerous trafficking survivors with various needs in our anti-trafficking program, led by Senior Pro Bono Counsel Tonya Klausner, who is such a great leader and so instrumental in so many of our pro bono efforts. At Wilson Sonsini, our activity in inclusivity is not limited to pro bono by any means. Our affinity groups, including Pride at Wilson and Women of Wilson, are very active in helping set our culture. The firm, led by Women of Wilson, recently hosted a firm-wide celebration of women initiative in honor of Women's History Month, with a mix of in-person and virtual pro bono, community service, and educational opportunities. At Wilson Sonsini, intentional inclusivity and our commitment to equity are not limited to a day, a month, a year, or any moment in time. They are bedrocks of our firm culture, 24/7, 365, with the tone set at the top by Doug Clark and Katie Martin, and a huge part of what makes our culture so vibrant, welcoming, and innovative across the firm. Again, we are honored and thankful to NLADA to receive this recognition. We salute the other very deserving recipients, and we look forward to celebrating with all of you soon. Thank you so much.